Calling all 90s and 2000s kids. Malcolm in the Middle was undoubtedly one of the best comedies of that era, going through 7 whole seasons and 151 episodes to receive 7 Emmys, 1 Grammy, 7 Golden Globe nominations, and even a Peabody Award. Now, 2 decades later, it looks like the show will make a comeback, and Bryan Cranston is already working on the script. Let's get right into it. First things first, Bryan Cranston writing Malcolm in the Middle reboot script, says Muniz. According to Frankie Muniz, who played the title character in the 2000 sitcom Malcolm in the Middle, his co-star Bryan Cranston is in the process of working on the script for a reboot. The show has been hailed as one of the best sitcoms of the modern television age, bolstered by widespread acclaim and popularity, as well as its impressive slew of Emmy wins. The comedy followed the lives of an extraordinarily dysfunctional family, with Muniz at the center as the star Malcolm, as they struggle to deal with their clashing personalities and temperaments. The sitcom, which also starred Jane Kasmerick, Christopher Masterson, Justin Burfield, and Eric Persullivan, has been brought up in the past many times lately for a possible revival. But while it looks like we're gonna get it eventually, it still hasn't been fully formed. Now, Bryan Cranston, who played Hal on the show, the patriarch of the central family, has recently expressed interest in reprising his role. Even in 2016, the Breaking Bad lead revealed that there were discussions about a possible sequel film. Cranston has repeatedly expressed his wish to bring Malcolm in the Middle back, adding that it would be fun to bring back his sitcom persona. Next up, let's talk about Muniz's interview with Fox News Digital. Muniz revealed it all in a recent interview with Fox News Digital. While he was mainly there to promote his participation as a cast member on VH1's The Surreal Life, the actor also ended up touching on the topic of his time in Malcolm in the Middle. He mentioned that Cranston is working on a script for a reboot that could be in the works, and while Muniz refused to confirm anything, he sounded pretty optimistic about it, even going on to say that if it did happen, he would be down for it 100%. Moving on, the best episode of Malcolm in the Middle. While we wait for official word on when the Malcolm in the Middle reboot might happen, let's take a walk down memory lane when we wait for a new show episode every week. Here are some of the best episodes of Malcolm in the Middle. First up, Reese Joins the Army, Part 1. This one was pretty interesting. Reese's new girlfriend was about as dumb as he was on the show. But while Malcolm initially disliked her, things turned around as time passed, and he grew so fond of her that when Beth eventually broke up with his brother, he was pretty disappointed. But even more disappointed than Malcolm was the one she broke up with, Reese. He went on to run away and even join the army under a fake last name, Jetson. In the same episode, we watch Hal's company go under, and 2 corrupted FBI officers try to convince him to falsely testify against his employer, and when he refuses, they arrest him, and the tables turn as Hal's employer falsely testifies against him instead. So much for loyalty. Lois is also pretty stressed in the episode, having to work overtime at the Lucky Aid to make ends meet, but her snappy attitude and all-around rising mental instability get her fired. Finally, Dewey enters a piano contest and gets pretty disappointed when everybody is too busy with their problems to notice. Next up, If Boys Were Girls. Season 10, Episode 4 is probably one of the most fun ones. It starts with Hal asking Lois if she wants the new baby to be another boy or girl, but they're interrupted by the boys fighting. And then, after a pretty hellish trip to the mall with Hal, she wonders what life would be like, and if her children were more well-behaved if they had been girls instead. And that's how suddenly we see Reese become Renee, Malcolm becomes Mallory, and young Dewey is now Daisy. Lois's fantasy starts out pretty nice, but as it continues, she quickly realizes that raising girls has problems of its own category. For one, Renee is pretty promiscuous and gets pregnant by Mallory's crush, and then Mallory's an insufferable brat, liar, and on a diet she refuses to let anyone know about. Not to mention, Daisy's a master manipulator. The problems are made even worse when Frances shows up, who had followed her male counterpart by rebelling against Lois and leaving for college, and then the girls band together to blame Lois for all of their problems, just like the boys had done earlier, making her realize that girls are no easier to raise than boys. Meanwhile, in the real world, Hal desperately searches for the perfect Valentine's Day gift for Lois and ends up settling on a baby's outfit. As the episode closes, the boys are well behaved for once and have even brought her a heart-shaped candy box, but Lois still hopes she gets a daughter. Coming up, traffic jam. Let's go back to the very first episode of the 2nd season. The family is kicked out of the water park and banned from ever returning for the rest of their lives. On the way home, Hal lets a car overtake him on the road, only for it to get hit by a truck, resulting in a massive traffic jam. Eager to get home, Lois harasses everyone to clear the accident so they can return to the road, and refuses to accept that she has zero control over the whole situation. On the other hand, Hal goes through an existential crisis as he realizes how easily he could have been in the place of the people who had gotten into the accident. As for the kids, first of all, Reese and some other kids go to war with a man in an ice cream truck who refuses to sell to him. Malcolm meets a smart, funny girl, but ends up having his heart broken when he finds out she lives in Canada. Still, she tries to stay in contact with him by giving him her phone number, but a vicious dog Lois freed earlier ends up eating it. Meanwhile, Frances tries to eat 100 candy quacks at the military military academy to settle some silly argument. And finally, Dewey gets lost in a cornfield and is escorted home by many people, arriving just a few moments before his family does. Following up, Lois strikes back. In this episode, Reese, four of the most popular girls at the high school, goes to play a prank on him by pretending he has a secret admirer, and then cruelly drops a pig off at his front door. Embarrassed, Reese ends up going into a depression, which Lois notices. She goes straight up to the principal for answers, but after a failed negotiation, she returns to Reese, forcing him to reveal the names of the four girls to her. She doesn't fail this time, and we watch the rest of the episode as she gets her sweet revenge for Reese. Meanwhile, Hal builds a pitching machine. Moving on. Billboard. When Lois catches the boys vandalizing a strip club billboard, Malcolm turns it into a women's rights protest to avoid punishment, which sparks a colossal media circus. A woman from Hal's past turns up at the faux protest after he gives a TV interview. Reese also gives a pretty passionate speech about the objectification of women, inspired by the giant billboard stripper who comes to life in his nightmare, while Lois tries to find a way to calm the boys down without causing a commotion in front of the media. Eventually, Lois lies to the police about Dewey having a serious medical condition, so the cops make them come down. Finally, bowling. The 20th episode of the second season followed a very sliding doors-esque story pattern, where the viewer got to simultaneously see what happens when the boys go bowling with their father, Hal, and what happens when they go with Lois. In both versions, only Malcolm and Reese end up going with either parent, because Dewey has to stay at home to kill the neighbor's parakeet, with the other parent guarding him and making sure he doesn't get up to any other antics. And yet still, in both versions, whenever Hal or Lois return home from the bowling alley with the kids, they ask the other parent to take them next time. Also, Alex McKenna appears as a guest star. And that's a wrap for this video. Would you watch the Malcolm in the Middle reboot? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one!